Hey, what's up guys? John here. In this video, I'm going to talk about the 3 best real estate investment types going forward to make a ton of money. If we're investing in the new normal, we're going to make money. If you're investing in the old way of doing it, you're likely going to lose money, and I'm going to explain why in this video. I mean, we look left, for example, and we see this person losing their business. We look right, and we see this person losing their property. You know, there's so much happening right now that it's important to take everything into consideration. For example, one of these things that could greatly impact your investment on either one of these 3 investment types is the politicians above us. Whether you're in California or New York or one of these states where they're very overreaching in their rights, these politicians. You're seeing all this, exodus from these blue states, and they're going to Texas and Florida and these other locations where the investors have more freedom and there's lower taxes. These are all things you want to take into consideration with the real estate investment. This is not political. This is strictly business. If someone can impact your investment, that is simply smart to understand what additional risk you're taking on with your investment. That, plain and simple. So that being said, let's begin. Please smash that like button and let's YouTube know that you like this content, and they'll be more likely to show you more real estate content, as well as they'll push this video out to more people and will help more people. Also, drop your comments below. Always respond. Let's begin. So number 3, I'm going to start with number 3, work my way backwards to number 1. Number 3 is warehouses and logistics centers. These are ideal for a variety of reasons. Why don't we take a look at how business is done today so we can better understand how these are going to perform going forward, how these asset classes are going to perform going forward. So Target, Walmart, Sears, JCPenney, all these big stores that were once hugely successful and everyone was shopping there and everyone was spending money, look at how their business model was structured. They had this huge location in the mall, and then they have a warehouse at this other location. And this warehouse would feed this store, right? Simple. But this store at the mall was very expensive. And every single day they were paying to store the products that they have not yet sold. So they can only afford to pay so much at this warehouse, right? So that being said, the warehouse is only that profitable. Now with Amazon and online stores, these stores, they fulfill their order to you quickly, 24 to 48 hours you have it. So they either ship it to you directly or a third party will send it. However, the moral here is that they hold their products for much less time. They make bigger margins, and their intention is to get it to you as quickly as possible so they're not storing and wasting lease space holding something they have not yet sold. So they need to be in a dense location. They need to be in a place where they can get to a lot of people in a short period of time. Now, that being said, since they have bigger margins and more demand is only going to grow in this asset sector, the property value is going to follow. These properties are based upon the income derived from the asset. So if they're making more money, you can charge more money because it's much more valuable to them. So that being said, this asset class is going to grow greatly. However, there is one downside. The downside here is that if you do rent out a warehouse to any other company, and this company, for example, stops paying, you're 100% vacant. So you're taking on more risk with that one big anchor tenant. So that's something you take into consideration. Also, another thing to take into consideration is the fact that you're going to need 30 to 40% down payment because it's a commercial sized deal, so you're going to need more money. So depending on your budget, that's something you want to take into consideration. But a great long-term value out here is that with warehouses and logistics centers, you're getting a huge parcel of land, a big parcel of land, and then essentially you just have this warehouse logistics center there. But if down the road, this land becomes much more valuable to a developer and it's zoned for multi-unit apartments or whatever it is, then you're able to sell it at a much greater price than you otherwise would be able to realize through a warehouse logistics center. So this is something to take into consideration. I definitely love this business model going forward. We see Blackstone, all these big private equity companies running out and buying a ton of these warehouse and logistics centers just over the last decade. So if you have the money, you have the resources, this is definitely something to take into consideration. I'd probably wait maybe 6 months to a year to dive into these, especially like right after elections, just because I think we're going to see a lot of shakeout happen in the market. And this is generally a higher priced asset class to jump into. Number two, single family homes. I believe will always do really well, especially now given the new landscape of business and how things are done. A lot of people are leaving the city. They're going from this city to this suburb now. Jobs are leaving the cities. There's more crime in the city. It's statistically known that schools are generally better in the suburbs than they are in the inner city. So there's a lot more reason to be in the suburbs. Now, you have to understand what type of property you should be buying. You don't want to buy the biggest home in the neighborhood. You don't want to buy the house that's on the busy street. You don't want to buy the house that's brand new, everything completely done. And the reason being is that when you buy a brand new house, in a couple of years, it's not going to look as nice. So you basically bought it for the top dollar, and ultimately the developer or the house flipper was the one that made the money on you. And on a busy street, you're also going to limit the amount of buyers you're going to be able to sell to down the road because you're buying it at a 5 or 10 or 15% discount, given the fact that you have a noisy street in front of you and a lot of cars passing by, and there's going to be less demand for that property down the road. And when you buy the biggest house in the neighborhood, you're also going to run into that issue that you're going to need a buyer that's also going to want to pay the most to be in that neighborhood. And generally, that's just a harder sale. So those are things that you want to take into consideration. But I believe the 3-bed, 2-bath houses, traditional old tract home, will do really, really well in the coming, decade, 2 decades. They'll do really well. I think we're going to, as I mentioned, have a correction soon. But a good house, I think, is way better than wasting all your money in rent. The number one best investment going forward into 2020 and beyond is multifamily apartments. There's no question about it. And this is why. So you have two different types of multifamily apartments. One, commercial, the huge, the big size deal. That's 5 units and above. And these deals generally cost more money to enter. So you might need 30% or 40% of the down payment to actually enter that deal. Now, the down payment is considered based upon the revenue driven from the property. Now, if you're in a place like Texas or any of these other states that basically offer landlords more control of their properties to where they can increase rents and keep it at market level, then ultimately you're going to put less money down. But if it's in a rent control area like California or New York, where the rents are generally depressed, that means that the building's making less money and you have to put a bigger down payment into the property for the lender to feel good about financing that deal. So it's going to cost you more money to enter the bigger commercial size deals. Residential, however, is a single family house all the way up to a fourplex. So multifamily would mean a duplex to a fourplex. The real advantage here, though, for you, if you bought a house and you rented it out and the tenant bailed on you and you had to come out of pocket to fulfill that mortgage obligation, then that's going to put you in a risky spot, because if you sign a 1-year lease, at the end of that 1 year, you're going to have at least 1 month worth of vacancy, probably more, because you're going to want to repaint it and show it to a few different tenants, and the tenant might move in the following month. It might be vacant for 2 months. So ultimately, you're taking on more risk. But if you have a duplex or a fourplex and one tenant leaves, you're fine, because you still are going to collect rent on the other unit, the other 2 units or 3 units, and you'll still make good on your mortgage commitments. You'll still put money in your pocket, and you'll ultimately be okay. Now, you want to take this into consideration with your overall investment strategy, and also take into consideration that most of these tenants in a depressed market, in a recession, they don't have money to go buy a house, so they have to rent. And so if they have to rent, then the landlord has more control, and the landlord's going to be able to increase rents, because ultimately, if they have to rent, then there's going to be more demand for the apartment. If there's more demand for the apartment than there is supply, then ultimately rents are going to go up. So I think that apartment buildings definitely going to be the way going forward. And also, you are hedging your bet, because if you're buying an apartment building, you're paying a low price per door, which also works out way better. So if you buy a house and the house is, say, $300,000, versus if you go buy a fourplex and it's $800,000, you're paying $200,000 per door on the fourplex versus $300,000 for the one door. And the discrepancy between the rent here and the rent here might only be 20% or 15%. So ultimately, you're going to do way better having 4 of these doors than 1 of these. So take all that into consideration. Pay attention to kind of your market and where trends are and what's happening. And that's essentially the best 3 investments going forward. If your plan is to step in and buy a really good deal, I'm talking an amazing, life-changing deal when this market crashes, maybe you're leaving a city, maybe you're going to a suburb or going to a new market you don't know yet, and you're kind of just learning. Right now, you're just learning, figuring out what the plan is going to be. But you like tailored mentorship. You like to really learn and run deals by me and talk with me and kind of come up with a business plan. Then join my mentorship program. I literally do FaceTime calls every single week on Thursday, great networking. I've actually partnered people up with one another. For example, William, I partnered up, I'll put up his video right here. Introduced him to someone else in my mentorship program. They went and bought a 5-plex in Tampa, and they're gonna probably make about $300,000-$400,000 just in that one deal, about $5,000 per month in gross profit. That's a lot of money. They bought this property. It was, I think, $550,000. They each put $80,000 down each, which is, pretty good sizable down payment. But they're gonna make over $2,000 each every single month just holding the property. So it just kind of depends on where you're at. I'm not obviously guaranteeing that you could go ahead and find a business partner and find a great deal like that. But I've helped a variety of other people just buy their own deals. So it kind of just depends on what your plan is. But ultimately, I think that the more you know, the more you understand about real estate investing, the more that you can look out for in terms of problems, the better you're going to do long term. If you look at what great real estate investors have in common, generally the first deal, they crushed it, just worked out really well, and they were able to leverage a variety of other tools and resources through that first deal to get them to the second and the third and the fourth deal. So just make sure that you understand kind of what you're doing. If you're at a stage right now where you're kind of just figuring out and you're not 100% sure, I have a free real estate investing playlist. I'd recommend just kind of cruising around there, watching all the videos. Drop your comments in those videos and I will definitely respond to you. And you can also feel free to drop your comments in this video, and again, I'll respond. Smash that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next video.